Welcome back to the NLV Pod. I'm your host, Dr. Fairbanks Jr., and I'm excited to bring another episode to you guys. And this one is a special one, someone that I've known for a long time, and I've watched his work from afar and getting to work with him up close. It's been a fun journey getting to know how this man works and the impact that he has on a lot of people and the good work that he does and how he spreads his education and community that he's trying to build. Y'all should follow him on LinkedIn too if you want game on what's happening in the college landscape. He does a good job of breaking things down. One of the few who I think has a unique skill set in the strength and conditioning side, but also the business side of sport. So I think you guys are going to learn a lot in this episode. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Xavier Brown. Xavier, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that intro. It's always surprising to hear all the, like you said, the impact. For me, it's just you just try to do good work. You try to be a good human to good people, and I'm glad someone appreciates the LinkedIn post. Sometimes you write them, you're like, man, I don't even know if people are reading these, but yeah, man. Like you said, we've known each other for a while now, gotten to work together. So I'm just glad to be on, and hopefully I can give some games to all your listeners, viewers, anybody that's part of your community.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think the skill set that you have is a unique one. And I think if you get to watch X work in person, you'll see what I'm talking about because he has a way of connecting with people, making them feel comfortable, and then pushing them to maybe new heights they didn't think was possible, but still keeping it cool, keeping it low key, and getting a lot of work done at the same time. So, X, I'm gonna just dive right in. Can you walk us through your
Sure.
journey? How does someone go from studying, like going through college, training people to becoming a strength coach for basketball players at all levels, high school, college, and pro?
Ah, man, this is I feel like I could talk all day, but I'm gonna make sure I don't go too crazy with it. But honestly, I think the background is kind of important. So for me, I was just naturally always just gravitated towards basketball. Like at a young age, I played every sport. I played soccer, football, whatever my parents could put me in, where I would just run around and get tired. But basketball was the one that just always, it was always a challenge for me. I just didn't pick it up as naturally as I did with soccer or something else. And so I think, to be honest, I think that's kind of where it started, where it was like, yo, like this is a challenge. This is something I have to overcome. Soccer is easy. And so I think that, I don't know, just overcoming adversity is something that always just drew me to the game. And then from that point, honestly, man, played in high school. I was looking to try to play in college, all those things. And I kind of got to a point where I kind of had a decision to make, where I had an injury in high school, had an opportunity to go to a college outside of Florida, where I'm from, as a preferred walk-on. But it was like, do I take this opportunity or do I just focus on staying in school? In the middle of me figuring out what I want to do and kind of rehabbing myself. I'd be in the gym every single day. I'd be training. And then one day a player naturally kind of just saw me in the gym working out. But he's like, you're always in here. See you
Hmm.
training. Yo, you mind if could we train together? And at first, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little selfish. I'm young. I'm still maybe in my teens, early 20s. And I'm like, nah, bro, this ain't crunch fitness. Like, I'm not a personal trainer because I had no idea this was even a thing. And so one day we just started working out together. I saw that I felt like he needed a little bit more TLC, a little bit more attention. And then it just naturally progressed to I'm not even training with him. I'm just training him. I do my stuff and he come in. I'm like, all right, cool. Here's what you got. Along the way, I just realized after reading Tim Grover's book, Tim Grover is Michael Jordan's trainer. He was Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant. But I read Relentless, and that's where everything started clicking. I'm like, oh, you can get paid to train athletes, right? That's the first stop. So I immediately start sending out messages on LinkedIn, reaching out to people, trying to just find a mentor. And then shout out to Michael Butler, my first ever mentor. And he's like, yo, pull up to this high school, I got you. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm about to work this football team, I'm about to work this basketball team. Oh, it's lit. I pull up to the high school down in it's what's it called? Tampa, Florida, Plant High School. And then they're just like, all right, the boathouse is in the back. Mike should be in there. I'm like, boathouse? What? No, it's strength and conditioning. He's like, yeah, he's a strength coach for the crew team. I'm like, what the hell's crew? So my first internship, I'm not working with any sport that I had in my head, right? I'm working with a crew team. And I think a lot of people saw crew as like this sport where you just kind of threw the have-nots, I guess, to so to speak, where obviously at the college level, it's intense, very specific, but at that level, it was someone that didn't play basketball, couldn't play football, et cetera. They're just playing this sport, competing in this sport. And so for early on, I was like, okay, it's not about just doing what you feel like you deserve or just doing something that you feel like you're entitled to, right? You have to be able to help everyone. That was the first lesson going into that. And Mike, day one, had a group of, it was like 5 or 6 freshman girls. He was just like, all right, first day, train them. I'm like in a polo and some slacks. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I want you to go train this group of freshmen. So it was the worst workout I've ever done in my entire life. It was like we were doing jumping jacks, push-ups. And I swear to God, after I got done, we're walking back to the car, the day's over. I'm like, he's I ain't coming back. He's gonna tell me not to come back. And he looks at me, he's like, yo, come back tomorrow. I was like, I wasn't horrible. He's like, no, you got something in you. You're gonna be great. And that was the start of everything, man. So I ended up getting an internship with them. Lo and behold, he actually knew the strength and conditioning coach at University of South Florida for men and women's basketball. He put me on with them. Got an opportunity after that, after the season, after the year. I was actually working with a high school out in Orlando, Florida, called Cocoa Beach High School. Literally, I'm driving every day. I'm driving an hour to this high school, train these athletes, do practice, and come back. And they got me a coach's stipend. It was probably like $1,000 at the time for the entire season, not even a month. It was really the love of the game, man. After that season, had an opportunity. I went to Lake Erie College out in Painesville, Ohio. It's 30 minutes from Cleveland. That was my first college experience. It was me. It was one other strength coach for, I want to say, it's probably like 400 athletes, 300, 400 athletes. And it was like, I don't want to say a sweatshop, but it felt like at that point, it was just a factory. Hey, you come in, you get your work in, you know what you're doing. So it was just reps at that point. Did that, got an opportunity to move to the Bay Area. This is like 2019, so COVID era basically. Get an opportunity to work more with this company called Future. They do online personal training, fitness training, but it was like a step in a different direction. Made that opportunity work. As soon as that happened, as soon as I moved out there, COVID hits. And I tell everyone, timing is everything. Who would have known that I moved to the Bay Area? I've never lived in California my entire life, never even visited, moved to the Bay Area. I work with an online fitness company, and then COVID hits the world, and the world goes remote. And it was just a blessing in disguise because I'm working remote. I don't have to go into an office, so I get to keep a full-time job. And then luck would have it, I had a bunch of basketball players I was reaching out to, just like connecting with them that lived in the Bay Area. And I got connected with one player. Her name is Fatima. Lo and behold, she had a gym that was actually open in the Bay Area. And this is actually, I think, where me and you started connecting. Because she's like, hey, there's this gym open in the Bay Area, about 30 minutes from where you live, because a lot of district stuff, like the gym is open. It's allowed to stay open. She's like, hey, let's go there and train. So I have a full-time job doing fitness training where I get to literally just program and kind of walk away from the computer. And then from that point, I started training Fatima. Fatima knew another gym owner who brought me on and said, hey, we need a strength coach for all our basketball players. We have a couple AAU teams, high school, college, some professionals coming in, but we need a guy to work with them. It just so happened that they were trying to bring someone in that couldn't make it. He's like, would you be open to that? Timing is everything. I was like, absolutely. From that point, I got to a point where honestly, I was making enough money where I was going to have problems, where I was like, oh, the IRS is actually going to come after me. So I had to make an LLC. That's where my basketball and barbells performance actually was born. So I had my own LLC. I was working remote, and I had worked at the only gym that was basically open in South Bay, East Bay area. And that's where everything started growing, man. So because of my connections with basketball, my background, my passion for it, I did all the, I guess you could call it the dirty work before that. I started making these connections. I started recording a lot of content on Instagram. That just brought in more business. And I was getting a lot of reps of basketball. And I think along the way, the most important thing I just found was just relationships. At the end of the day, you're going to have seasons where you're close to people. You're going to have seasons where you may not interact with people, right? Some people come and go, but I think at the end of the day, you just have to really be intentional about how you handle those because relationships take time and trust and a lot of effort to build, but I think it's also very quick to undermine them. From that point, man, a couple of years go by, the WNBA, calls, had relationships with the old coach who moved to the Sparks and said, "Hey, do you want to come up here and interview?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." They're not going to take me. I work college, high school. They don't want me in the pros. And lo and behold, they loved my interview, brought me up there. That was a great experience. It was a challenge, right? But I think at that point, the difference with, I'd say, professional than it is high school, they're your colleagues. Even though they're athletes, even though they might come in or they might come off like, hey, I don't really know, they don't know what they're doing as rookies. You got some vets on the team that are like, hey, this is what works for me. This is what I like doing. How can we work together? And so that was like kind of balancing act of itself. Had an opportunity after the season, went to Weber State, worked with men's basketball, men and women's basketball. From there, I was just kind of tired of moving around, man. I was kind of tired of doing the whole Seattle Bay Area, Utah. My girlfriend at the time, now fiance, she was out in LA and was like, "Hey, you're unhappy. We can see that. I think it'd be great if you could build something out here in Los Angeles." So kind of took a leap of faith, made the move. We actually started working together at a private gym. Did that for about a year and a half, working with, as we call it, finance bros, the weekend warriors. And then from there, man, I was able to eventually make the pivot into athletic administration, NIL, things like that I'm doing right now. So definitely long-winded answer, but that was the journey. I think the biggest thing for me was just the relationships. At the time, I wasn't looking for anything from anybody. I was just asking for guidance and mentorship. And I always tried to make sure I would bring it back to them at some point and return the value. I'm
Mhm.
like, hey, you spent an hour on the phone with me. Cool. Here's literally this drive. I don't even know how I did it. It was like 2 gigabytes of podcasts, articles. Hey, thank you for talking to me. Here's access to this drive, right? Here's all this value that you may or may not even read. And along the way, it's just gratitude, man. Just being where your feet are, appreciating everything. Timing, timing is everything, but I think you got to put yourself out there to be at the right place at the right time. So hopefully that answered the question. Definitely went way longer than I expected.
No, it's all good. I appreciate the insight because there's a lot of things that I feel like people can learn from just going through your journey of it seems to me what I heard when you were explaining that was that obviously building relationships are important and making sure they're two-way streets and you are asking
Mhm.
for something but you're giving something in return, but also just being able to say yes to the opportunities and putting yourself out there to say yes to the opportunities. Even who knows if it's a rowing team or a crew team, you can still utilize things that you learn from those people and those athletes and bring them to basketball, even though they're two separate things. So the question I want to ask is, when you were working with the crew team, are there concepts or principles that you take from that experience that you bring into your life working with basketball athletes, even though it's two totally different sports?
Yeah, I think part of it, I say it from this point with crew and honestly high school crew, we didn't have this crazy access to this weight room. I'm trying to remember. We had some old dumbbells. We had 2 squat racks. This random bench pull machine. It's like made of wood, right? So I'm just like, yo, what are we doing here? So we didn't have half the resources that some of these high schools have. Definitely not college, but I say from that perspective, and it had nothing to do with training principles at all. It was just the creativity that goes into your training, and I think just bringing it down to the fundamentals, right? So we didn't even have trap bars, right? We didn't have a lat pull down. We didn't have all these center mass bells. I don't even think we had bands, right? But at the end of the day, we really just focus on the fundamentals: upper push, upper pull, right? Single arm, double with both arms, bilateral push, pull, single leg, both legs. At the end of the day, the fundamentals were always going to be the key. And especially at that age, you don't need to, as sexy as it looks, you don't need to do anything that's really crazy out the window. We don't need to do all types of, I don't even know, using Kaiser machines. For us, it was just, hey, let's do the fundamentals, let's do the basics, and let's do them exceptionally well. So they're coming in, right? Squat looks bad. All right, cool. We're gonna go basic body weight squat. All right, then we might load up to a goblet squat, and even then dumbbell front squats because we didn't have any barbells really available, right? And then it's just kind of progressing through that. Then maybe we'll go bilateral to split squat. Then we might go rear foot elevated, et cetera, et cetera. So at the end of the day, for me, I think what I really took from that was we don't have anything in this weight room except these decrepit old dumbbells that we may or may not get sick from, right? But at the end of the day, we have the training principles of just being very basic, and it's boring at times, but boring works.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the one thing that I really pulled from that. Honestly, it stays with me. Don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of seeing something cool on Instagram or YouTube, and I'm like, yo, I'm about to do that. And at the end of the day, it's fun to do that, and maybe you do need a little bit of that sprinkled variety on there. But at the end of the day, I think training is training, especially for underdeveloped and low training age athletes, right? Like teach them the basics, teach them the fundamentals, sprinkle in some fun in there, don't get me wrong, but I think you got to be ruthlessly exceptional at the foundation, or else you're just building your house on rollerblades at that point.
Sounds like something Tim Grover would say. Sounds like a relentless cat. I totally agree though. I totally agree. It's the same in my world. It's if we try and skip to the fun stuff that you see on YouTube and Instagram, but we don't build the base and the
Yeah,
capacity to be able to express the movements that you're trying to do, then we're in for a world of trouble. And so that's why I try and tell people the same thing. It's like we have to build this foundation first, and you'd be surprised how much you can grow over the course of 6 months, a year, if you stick with it and really just take the
exactly.
time to really do the small things really well. And then you start to notice, oh, I can
Yeah,
jump a little higher. I'm running a little faster. A year ago, I was doing this. Now I'm able to do pull-ups, whatever the goal is in the weight room, but it also translates to the court, both from a physical aspect, but also I think a
yeah,
mental confidence, mental improving your belief in yourself and your ability to do hard things,
yeah,
which I think builds is good for young athletes, old athletes, whoever the case may be.
yeah.
So
Especially for, I was gonna say, especially for basketball, man. Not to cut you off, but basketball players are notorious for not wanting to train.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
want to get shots up. So, yo, just over time, to your point, you're going to see the results, but keep it simple, keep it basic. It may get boring, right? Sprinkle some variety in, right? Change it up with a little bit if you need to, but like you said, man, let's get the foundation first, right? We don't want to skip steps because hey, eventually the curtain's going to rise, all
yep,
right, and you're going to be exposed for what you did and didn't do. So,
yep.
hey, do what you need to, man.
Yep. So, because of all the steps that you've taken along the way, you've gained a lot of experience working with a lot of different athletes, a lot of different profiles, compositions. What's the difference between training a basketball player and, let's say, a weekend warrior? What are some things that you like to emphasize when you're working with a basketball player versus maybe wouldn't be something that you utilize with a weekend warrior?
I think it is the conflicts that come along with being an athlete. So what I mean by that is weekend warriors. I guess technically I'm a weekend warrior now. Like I don't have to practice 5 days a week, right? So maybe my capacity for training is going to be different. The frequency may be a little bit different versus I'll say even high school, like over the summer. Now we've got AAU, we've got all this travel ball, EYBL, depending on the level you play at. We're just constantly playing. We constantly have some type of stressors that are working. So for me, I just think the number one thing immediately is just, okay, what are they actually doing at this point in the season or this point in the year? So for me, it's like with basketball, they're playing so often now. I want to be able to complement what they're doing, not necessarily conflict with it. If they're playing over the summer these days, the weekend warrior is not. Maybe with the weekend warrior, maybe we're doing a lot more introductory plyometrics. Maybe we are able to train a little bit more often with the frequency. With high school basketball, if they're playing constantly, they got 5 games in 2 days, whatever it is they're doing with AAU, right? Maybe I don't necessarily need to focus too much on the plyometrics because they're getting so much of that, right? And that depends on their schedule. And maybe we don't train as frequently as much as I want to say, hey, what my job is the most important thing, they need to do this. The reality is that there's going to be a tug and pull. So I think immediately it's just looking at what they're constantly doing. They're playing, they're jumping, they're running, right? So maybe we taper back on some of those plyometrics and maybe we add a little bit more isometric work, right? So we can really learn how to own positions and we can still get some type of stress, right? Some type of load on their system. But maybe I don't want to take away from what they're going to do on the weekend or during their games or summer league plays, right? So for me, I might do a lot more isometric work with the actual basketball player. Maybe I don't do as many plyometrics. And maybe I'm going to focus a little bit more on some of the eccentric, some of the breaking qualities, right? Depending on when they play, I want them to be able to learn how to absorb force, especially because they're always expressing that on the court. I want to get the opposite of what they're not getting, right? On the court, they're explosive, running, jumping. Let's get the opposite. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's learn how to actually load our systems. Let's actually load the tendons in a different way than they're actually getting on the court. Whereas the weekend warrior, you're playing once a week at LA Fitness, right? Maybe we are going to do a little bit more plyometrics. Maybe we can train in a way where I can have more frequency, more volume, right? But may not be realistic with the basketball player. They're already getting a ton of volume on the court. So for me, it's just about just the frequency, maybe the way we actually load the system, maybe more eccentrics, maybe more isometrics, so I can still develop strength, maybe develop a little bit more of that force absorption qualities that they're not really getting on the court. And then even just in thinking about when they actually play. So for me, this worked in the pros. Couldn't do it just because of NCAA regulations in college, but I love training on game days too, right? So
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Before we get into today's episode, this episode is brought to you by The Blueprint, a free community for hoopers who want to get better at the game of basketball. You'll have the chance to get weekly content, have the ability to ask any and all your questions related to the game, and it's free. So the link's in the bio. Join, and we'll see you guys in the Blueprint. Now let's get back to today's episode.
for me, I would always do post game lifts. It depends on the level that they're at or how often they're playing. But for me, training on game days is, hey, if they're already playing pretty frequently, especially in the summertime, who knows what their schedule is? Maybe they do play their 2, 3 games, and maybe they come in for a shorter session, right? And we do some of those qualities, the isometric, the eccentric. That way we can keep, if this is a high intensity day, instead of them coming in Monday and then they play Tuesday and we're keeping that stress high, they actually never really recover. All right. So if we can actually train on the same day that they're playing, we keep this day, keep this intensity up there. Tuesday, they can actually really focus on the recovery. So that way they can actually, one, learn and build from those qualities, but two, we also don't risk burnout. All right. And that's a real thing. We talk about the physical side, but I think also just the mental side of things, right? Where if they're playing constantly, training constantly, we got to be able to be intentional about our recovery days. And that doesn't mean we don't do anything, but maybe we change the stimulus. Maybe we do go and maybe we go for can be a walk, or maybe we do something where we play pickleball, right? Still low intensity. We're getting them away from the sport, but we're also still keep them active and moving. So long-winded answer. That's kind of the thing that I think about. Weekend warriors, they're going to have a lot more capacity, a lot more availability to train more frequently, and even just the way we load the system. Basketball, because they're at a position where sport is year-round, we got to be really intentional about how we train, when we train, and even just how often we train at this point.
Yep, for sure. So when you get an athlete, let's say, I'll give you two scenarios. One's a guard, one's a big, and you're seeing them for the first time. Let's say, are there certain things that you look for or screens you put them through to see how you're going to think about bucketing them as an athlete when it comes to building programs for them?
Yeah. So for me, typically, if I actually get the opportunity to take them through an actual full screening process, one, obviously vertical jump, like every player, right? So looking at vertical expression or just power expression, I think vertical jump, you can do different variations of that. You can go hands on hips, counter movement. You can go with arm swing. You can do a one step. I just think depending on your availability, getting some way to express power, I think that's one. I usually go counter movement jump, squat jump, just because jumping as a skill, you're going to have some of those that are actually going to be able to muscle through, right? So have a high squat jump and then their counter movement jump this week. They don't really have access to that stress shortening cycle, right? And what does that look like? Some players, counter movement jump is super easy, right? They're springy. They actually know how to use their tendons, stress shortening cycle, but their squat jumps are terrible. So now I know, all right, if I got a player that comes in, jumps high counter movement, the squat jumps a little bit lower, maybe we have a little bit more opportunity for that strength capacity, developing that strength. I get a player that comes in and is like squat jumping through the roof, but then counter movement jump is They got a flat tire. All right, so maybe we just need to work a little bit more on the stress shortening cycle, the actual skill of jumping. So vertical jump for me is going to be automatic. I personally, I actually love going into three-quarter court sprints. So looking at acceleration, you don't have to necessarily go to a full court sprint because in basketball, you're never really actually going to get to top speed. Unless you're going end to end, right? You get the ball either out the net and you're gone, or you're getting for a rebound and pulling a Westbrook or John Wall. You're never really going to develop full speed. So for me, three quarters is enough to see, all right, what's that acceleration actually look like? And again, just end to end, just seeing what they can develop. From there, honestly, keeping it simple, like I said, some type of lower body, ideally trap bar deadlift, maybe even just a 3 rep max. I personally don't like going into a 1 rep max, usually because basketball players, again, training ages, usually pretty low. You don't want to get them in a position where they're going to injure themselves. Technique, I also don't want to be a factor, the limiting factor. So 3 rep max is actually pretty good. We can still estimate what their 1 rep max is going to be. I like trap bar deadlifts just because the bar is pretty low in terms of teaching the actual movement. For the most part, as long as you can do a warm up set, you'll probably learn how to actually properly do it and pull you in the position. And then honestly, from there, I'll go. I don't like barbell bench presses personally, so I'll go with the dumbbell 3 rep max just because of shoulder positioning. For me, it's a little bit safer and it's super easy to teach. Their confidence that you talked about before. It's weird. I've had players that will dumbbell bench 60s, 70s, right? But then they see a barbell and they're like, "Ah, I don't know, man. It's less than what you just benched, right? So it's interesting. You see the confidence come through. And then from there, honestly, outside the strength qualities and power development qualities, for me, I'll just do a somewhat of an FMS screen. For me, I do think, especially with basketball, with the limited ankle mobility, even sometimes shoulder mobility, I think it is at least worth looking at what happens on an unloaded position, specifically like an overhead squat, because I think it is going to at least give you an idea of what may happen under load or even when they get into their sport. So if a player is going to an overhead squat and all of a sudden they're flexing, right, going into a deep flexion at their hip or their shoulders are falling forward, right, chances are, one, they're actually not even able to get into a deep quarter squat position, or if they are, maybe it's going to be knee valgus, right? So at least, okay, there's going to be some type of constraint that's going to be on them physically. So I like going overhead squat. And even then, there was when I used to do an inline lunge where I can see what happens in a unilateral position. Like, again, are they actually able to balance? Are they actually getting down into a deep squat position and actually able to maintain that? So those are things I used to typically go through. Again, like if you're working with a bunch of players, bunch of athletes, you may just do overhead squat, you may just do a 3 rep max. But for me, I want to look at power. I want to look at how they're actually able to express force quickly. What is their max capabilities to express force, acceleration, and then just an idea of how they typically move, right? And so for me, even when I was actually able to work with a Division 1, I easily typically saw, okay, like you're gonna have an idea of what type of program you develop for your athletes. And usually with the, let's say, less experienced athletes, it always comes back down to the fundamentals,
Mhm.
right? So hopefully I answer your question.
Absolutely. So to piggyback off that, you
Mhm.
are familiar with all levels of basketball, high school, pro, on the men's and women's side. Are there things that you find across all three levels that players just seem to be, what's the word, lacking or underdeveloped in terms of a strength and conditioning standpoint?
Yes. If I just say it straight up, honestly, hip strength is going to be the number one thing. And what I mean by that is because basketball is such a quad dominant sport, we kind of talked about you're never really going to hit top speed. A lot of it is change of direction. The court is small, right? Especially when you're playing in the half court, you're constantly decelerating, you're constantly braking. And even then, before you go into your actual jump, you kind of get into that quarter squat position. It's not really a full squat. So one thing I noticed, especially with younger athletes, especially with younger female athletes, hip strength is going to be the low-hanging fruit. And what I mean by that is you kind of look at them and you put them in a glute bridge, for example, they act like they've never bridged in their entire life, right? And it's like, yo, and even when they do, typically they're almost like trying to go into some type of knee extension, right? To be able to bring their pelvis into neutral. And it's like, yo, so for me, I just look at that and again, we'll start from the very foundations. Let's go on the ground. Let's go into a glute bridge. I just want you to squeeze and hold in this position for 30 seconds, right? Maybe bilaterally, feel your glutes. Maybe I add a band so I can just kind of get some type of external reinforcement where they know, okay, I'm actually engaging. And then from there, if it's too easy, all right, let's go single leg. 9 times out of 10, as soon as you go single leg, they're like, oh, I can't do this for 20 seconds, right? What's going on? They cramp all this stuff. And it's just almost fascinating when you kind of look at it from that perspective of, wow, I have you in the weight room and I literally just saw this over the summer. You can barely do a even shoulder elevated glute bridge, single leg glute bridge. But I look you on the court and you're blowing past everybody. You're running past everybody. So for me, it's one doesn't necessarily feed into the other, but I think even just looking at hip strength, hip development, not necessarily just abduction, but also just being able to go into hip extension, right? Because I do think we kind of talked about it before, going up the chain, if there is some type of issue going on at the ankle joint, or if for whatever reason they can't really go into dorsiflexion, they can't really actually get full range of motion through that ankle, it usually travels up the hip. And so to kind of accommodate for that, all of a sudden now you're going to get increased hip flexion. Because basketball is already a quad dominant sport, in my personal opinion, it's like almost like they're feeding into each other. So now they have no ankle mobility. Their hips are weak because they're never really actually using them and they're already using their quads almost overdeveloped in the sport. They almost don't get any type of hip development whatsoever, hip strength. So for me, I just keep it very simple. We'll go from the floor. All right, go into a glute bridge, single leg, maybe a band for external reinforcement. Then maybe we go shoulders elevated. Even then, bilateral single leg, maybe I add a chain across the hip, right? So I can add some type of external load that we can start actually quantifying how much I'm actually doing. From there, load it how you want to. You can go the dumbbell, you can go with a medicine ball. Maybe if they seem advanced, you can go into a barbell. For me, those are the things I usually typically see. And again, it's not something you notice as soon as you see them because they're so athletic, they're so explosive, but it's almost like that chink in the armor, right? And I've seen that high school. I saw it even with the pros, right? There's usually some type of issue that happens, some type of injury, and it always came back. The athletic trainer came back and said, "Hey, her hips are weak, his hips are weak, and we're not even doing anything crazy. Maybe we'll do some clamshells, right? Maybe we'll do some single leg isos, some overcoming isos, or something like that." But it always came down to the hips, hip extension, and abduction. Basketball players are just underdeveloped, but it's also just the environment that they play in that it's not really something that they develop over time anyway.
Yep, for sure. I totally agree with you. So when it comes to having to, your job is to help the players develop, but also keep them playing and keep them available on the court. Are there things besides, I don't know, hip strength obviously being like really a low-hanging fruit, super important. Are there things that you find have been beneficial? Maybe there's no evidence behind it that you found, but just anecdotally, it's like this is doing a really good job of keeping my players on the court and available to play. Are there things that you've learned along the years that you're like, I don't know where this comes from, but I do it because it's brought success to our players?
It's like the opening the umbrella inside the house. Your grandma said it's bad luck. Yeah. So we're not gonna open the umbrella in the house. Honestly, man, I know there's so much evidence with isometrics, overcoming or yielding. So overcoming, for those that are listening, overcoming is like I'm pushing against something that's immovable. Yielding is like I'm at a split squat and I'm holding dumbbells, and I'm trying to maintain that position and not let the dumbbells basically push me into a deeper knee flexion. Honestly, for me, ISOs have been something I feel like I added to the game probably closer to when I was in the Bay Area that I didn't do that often. It's healthy for their tendons, specifically basketball players, specifically the patellar tendon, right? Just because jumpers knee all over the place. And again, same thing. They're playing so often that they don't get what they don't get on the court in the weight room. So for me, honestly, ISOs, and I'll just usually focus on very basic like Spanish squats, right? So Spanish squats are something that I typically like to do. That's a yielding. I'll just get either one or two bands. Maybe I don't even go barbell, right? But even dumbbell, we're just sitting in a quarter squat position or joint specific where they're feeling the pain and just hold for time. three sets, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. I've done four sets, 30 seconds, but Spanish squats, I just don't know. That's always been something that over time players eventually like, man, that's my warm up. I love it. So Spanish squats are always a big thing. But also even I've come to love, I forget the name, it's like the spring ankle series, right? So especially with Achilles injuries. So spring ankle, it's basically it's the same with Spanish squats, so it's the yielding. So I might have that heel just slightly off the ground, knee bent. I'm in this position for 10, 15 seconds. And then from there, maybe I'll go into full plantar flex. So now knee still bent, and now my heel's high off the ground, holding that position. And then I might go into full extension where I'm just almost like a wall drill, like a wall sprint. I'm holding onto the wall and just holding that for time. I feel like those two exercises personally, one, I do them myself because I'm old now. But two, I just think getting in a place where we can develop that positional strength, where we can give that tendon the opportunity to develop over time and not have it constantly act like a rubber band, pulling and tugging in sport. Honestly, ISOs, those two specific exercises are something that I feel like I've given players and they've loved it. Spanish squats in particular. I know there's so much evidence for isometrics, but specifically for basketball, I know there's so many other ways, so many other exercises we can do, but I always come back to that one specifically. For some reason, they just love it. I'm like, it's working. Let's just keep working with it. And honestly, this is the last one. Honestly, even just very basic eccentric calf raises, two up, one down. So I'm on 2 feet. You can have a dumbbell in your hand. You can hold on to a bar for stability, but plantar flex off 2 feet and then lift one and then slowly come down to the other one. 3 seconds for tempo. But for me, that overloading on the eccentric side, specifically for the calf, it's almost like they do that for a week, 2 weeks, and they're like, yo, my calf pain is gone. My Achilles doesn't bother me anymore. And it's like, yeah, because you play 17 games in 3 days, and I'm giving you the opposite of what you're doing. I feel like those three things, especially over this past summer, have been like the three exercises or three concepts that I've really applied. And I've always used those. Spanish squats, man, for the win. They suck when you're doing them. You're like, yo, when is this going to be over? But always, man, very simple, very basic, but it's effective, man.
How heavy do you have them loaded? Spanish squats.
Spanish squats, honestly, it depends. But let's just say for my high school, I'm telling you, man, like they'll have a 30-pound dumbbell in their hands and they're burning by like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not heavy at all. But for me, I'm just looking for that burn, right? So I'm looking for, all right, can they do body weight? Too easy. Cool. We'll go for 15, 20 pounds, 30 pounds. For me, it was a lot different high school versus college. I remember one particular player, I'm trying to remember, we were on the athletic training platform. So still a yielding. It wasn't a Spanish squat. We didn't have bands, but we had almost like a belt squat. And he was sitting in that quarter squat position. For college, that's a lot different. So they're going like heavy. I want to say over 200, 250. I can't remember exactly, but they were seniors. They had been training higher training ages. High school is very different. For me, it's more about like how much can we tolerate in this specific position. Obviously, you're gonna get that burn, and it's gonna vary. Like a high school player, 30 pounds, right? They can barely do 3 sets of that, versus a college senior that's playing overseas now, it's going over 250, right? And same exact exercise. Maybe the way that we set up was a little bit different, but the concept the same is we're still in a yielding quarter squat isometric position, just strength, man. How much they can tolerate. That's how I went about loading the two different age groups.
For sure. No, I asked that because I feel like there's a lot of evidence for the longer sets and reps of 5 by 30 to 45 seconds for tendon health or tendon or bringing down pain. But I find that just people don't load it heavy enough or it's not challenging enough for the person in front of you. And so you're not really getting the effects as well as you could if you load it heavy enough. So I always tell people it got to be heavy enough to be a challenge by the end of the 30. You can't go more than the 45 or the duration of time we're going for. Otherwise, we got to go up and making sure you're feeling the right places.
Hey, and that's the big weekend warriors. They might cuss you out. They're like,
Man, probably.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so in the pros, I want to dive deeper into the pros because I know there's people that are listening that want to probably be a professional athlete and want to know what life is like to getting to that pro level. Do they ever talk to you about how the journey they took to get to that level, whether it's with the Sparks or the Storm or whatever professional athletes you work with? Are there any common themes that you've noticed about their journey to get to the pros?
Yeah, man. So that's a good question. I'll say this. I know if you're not part of that 1%, and it's different now, right? Especially with the WNBA, where there's more opportunity. But in 2023, there was only 12 teams, right? And then you could have maybe 12 players on each roster. So there's 144 spots. Now it's different because they have 15, 16 teams and they have developmental spots. So way more opportunity. The one thing that I found was players, even that were good in college. Like I know I forget her name. She was a number one overall pick, and she stuck around for 2 years before she had to go overseas. Is that I think there's an expectation that once they're drafted or when they have the opportunity to get drafted, they're playing well in college, that, oh, it's just easy, right? It's just downhill from here. And I don't mean that to undermine anyone's experience, but it's so easy to say if I'm doing well, I'm projected to go first or second round, that okay, cool, like that's it. I don't have to work any harder. A lot of these players, because there wasn't enough spots, because there wasn't enough teams, and because the money wasn't there, right? They had to go play overseas. Like I knew, and even now, there's several rookies probably in the WNBA that probably like closer to our age, man. Like they had to do 5, 6, 7 years overseas, really build that experience and build that expertise before they are actually able to make it to the WNBA, right? And even now they have the B, what's it called? Project B, Unrivaled, which may
Mhm.
not necessarily be a development league, but it's hard because professionals, even NBA, WNBA, I'll say this, it's a lot harder to get that pro experience if you're not playing in a with a college team against other prospective professional athletes, or at least playing in a professional system. So obviously we can look at the blue bloods, Duke, Louisville, UNC, right, Kentucky, Kansas, right. It's very clear as day, like they're gonna go play professionally. But now we've got schools like Santa Clara that are starting to produce more talent to the NBA. Even smaller schools like the mid majors, like Weber State, we had Dylan Jones, right? And he didn't play against any, I would say, professional talent except Danny Wolf, right? He played at Yale, but that was a one off. He just happened to transfer. I say all that to say, don't necessarily look at the NBA or WNBA as the end goal be all. There's other opportunities overseas that a lot of college players that were really good had to go experience, right? They had to go overseas. They had to go in the G League and still develop, right? Because again, if you're not playing against other pros that are potentially going pro or playing in a pro system, a lot of scouts are going to look at that and say, it's good, but is he actually that good? Is she actually that good? Are we going to make this $1 million investment into this player? My job's on the line, right? And these are things that I've heard scouts actually say. So at the end of the day, I think the one common thing I found was players that had expectations, high expectations for themselves to go play professionally at the highest level, perceived at the highest level, they found that they had to take a lot of detours. They had to go get that pro playing experience overseas or even domestically, taking a way bigger pay cut than they really expected to play in the G League or be a developmental player in the WNBA, just to build that resume. When they get that opportunity, it doesn't feel like, oh, someone's taking a wild chance on me. I just had to keep proving myself. The one story I actually have is for Sammy. Sammy, she played for the Seattle Storm when I was there, and Sammy was a workaholic. I'm coming in, I'm getting there 7 a.m. practice, pre-practice, start lifts and stuff didn't start till 9 or something like that. And Sammy knocking on the door trying to get in. She's like, "Hey, I want to get my lift in. I want to get extra shots up." She would stay after, "Hey, can we do some extra sprints at the end? Can you get on the echo bike and do some time stuff?" She was at this point still a vet, but she always had this motor to keep going. And so when I talked to her, she just told me it was the same situation. She came out of college, I forgot where she played, didn't get drafted. So she had to go overseas and she had to figure her stuff out for 3 or 4 years. And even then, when she did come to the even then, physically, she was different. She was a little bit heavier, didn't move the same. And I think she had to go back overseas for a little bit before she came back and actually stuck around. So she was also an older rookie. And this is someone, again, who is now playing on I think the Phoenix Mercury right now, but she's won a championship, right? Or at least competed for a championship, was with the Liberty, doing her thing. The point I'm trying to make with all this is that I think a lot of college athletes get fixated on, yeah, I'm about to make this next step. I'm about to make this jump to the next level. But at the end of the day, I do think that there's other opportunities out there. One that are still going to be as lucrative, maybe not as lucrative as a max contract in the NBA, but can still allow you to live a great lifestyle with your family. Two, can allow you opportunity to continue to build your skill set, right? Because especially if you're a specialist, the higher you go, depending on your situation in college, you may not get an opportunity to develop those certain skill sets that's actually going to get you at the professional level. So go develop that overseas where you have a chance to get paid and you're going to get a little bit more exposure. Go take those developmental opportunities to continue to develop your skill set against other pros. And now you're affiliated with the NBA team domestically. So common thing I found is sometimes most of the professional players that think they're going to go straight to the NBA or WNBA, they had to make some detours along the way, develop that skill set, and then they finally got the big break. Because NBA, WNBA, you're the 1% of the 1%. So you thought it was hard to make college and play. Imagine that. Everyone's just as good as you in the professionals, just as fast. They just maybe have more experience or they have a more developed skill set. So yeah, man, it's crazy. It's crazy seeing it in person, and it's crazy even having those conversations.
I bet. But I feel like that kind of comes back to the beginning of our conversation and when we were talking about opportunities and relationships and being ready for opportunities. You don't know when it's going to come. You don't know what injuries are going to happen in the league, when you might get called up. Going through those kind of struggles and really questioning whether you want to do this, if you want to go get shots up in the morning, go do extra sprints, go do the extra post game lift that questioning if you really question. I imagine you really question if you really want to. Some days it gets hard. So then I'm like,
Oh yeah.
if you once that opportunity comes, I think that it just makes it that much sweeter when it comes because you've been preparing for that moment, and it's not too big of an opportunity because you've put in years and reps
Yeah.
over the course of time to really seize it. So I think that was a really I appreciate the story. I appreciate all the context because I think it's something that people don't think about. It's kind of like, all right, number one high school prospect, number one college prospect. I want to be number one NBA prospect, and sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't go. It doesn't go like a lot of the time. It does not go like that.
Absolutely not, man.
And even if you're really talented, it's not enough to keep you in the league. There's always someone coming after your spot. You know what I'm saying? I think it just keeps you hungry and keeps you really grateful for the opportunity. But I want to transition a little bit to the academic side of X and what X has been up to with. Tell me a little bit about why you decided to go back to school and what you were hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, that's crazy. Actually, no one's actually ever, besides my fiance, obviously, asked me this question. Yeah, I think for me, it started actually, funny enough, when I got to Monarch, right? So I felt like at that point, it's funny that Monarch, hey, it changes you. You're like, hey, I gotta make some life decisions. Yeah, no disrespect to anybody. Shout out to them. For me, I just felt when I moved to LA, I had just basically made that pivot to, okay, now we're in corporate wellness, but what's next? And I kind of had to sit with myself, and it's almost kind of like it was like a identity, I don't want to call it identity crisis, but it was a battle internally where I'm like, do I want to continue to train? Do I want to continue to develop this expertise in this specific niche, or what is it that actually fills my cup? And so for me, I kind of had to look back and say, was the training the part of it that really fulfilled me? Right? Because at that point, I've been basketball forever, right? Couple sports in between, but I've been basketball forever. So it's like now that I'm in corporate wellness, it's a different setting, different clients. And so I kind of had to internalize and say, I loved what I did at the time that I did it. My priorities are changing. I don't want to work for a college team. I don't want to work for a professional team. And right now it's like, do I feel like I'm making the impact that I feel like I can make? So I kind of went back and said, I love working with student athletes. I love college, even loved high school. And especially how to have conversation with the players. You're getting to know them. Obviously, you're asking them questions about themselves. I think the thing that stuck with me is I always look back and I promise you, even right now, it's still relevant. You'll go and ask a player, tell me one fun fact about yourself. It has nothing to do with hoop. I don't care what it is. You could play, I don't even care, pickleball. You could make pound cakes. What do you like to do? And the players, 80% of them gonna look at you like, I just hoop. I'm like, dude, your identity is tied to this thing, right? And I speak from empathy because I was that player. I was that person where I tied my entire identity to this sport. So when it got removed from my life in a way where I didn't play anymore, it was like, yo, who am I? That was the first thing I noticed, but also too, I just felt like no matter what, every player is going to retire. LeBron James, as great as he is, as amazing he is, he's going to eventually, the ball's going to stop bouncing. And he's going to actually pivot into being a businessman, maybe owning the Las Vegas Jacks or whatever the hell they're going to call it. But for me, it just got to a point where I was like, yeah, I want to make an impact with student athletes in a different way where I can prepare them for life, for careers outside of their sport, but also still have the opportunity to mentor them. So that's where I went back to instead of getting a master's in strength and conditioning, human performance, kind of the usual. I was like, I'm gonna get my master's in sports management. And I know a lot of people, a lot of coaches, I would say, what? Like, why not human performance? There's this one, and I'm like, I want to take this experience. I don't want to just throw it away, but I want to use what I've learned and be able to take that with student athletes in a different way. Funny enough, I'm wearing that too. But LSU did sports management online, so I can still obviously work, still live out here in LA. And a lot of it was student athlete development, thinking about how we prepare these athletes through mock interviews, right? You'd be shocked at how many players go into an interview and they don't know how to interview. Even talking about financial literacy, right? NIL, players are getting paid. We see the 1% of millions of dollars, right? But players' average deal is probably $500 or $600. So people don't realize you got to pay taxes on the money you get. So financial literacy, but even then, just being able to create communities with them. So affinity groups. So whether they're diversity, equity, inclusion, even mental health services, I feel like all of these things were something that also go into the college athlete experience. And I want to make sure that they were able to experience all that outside of just what their sport is. And I felt a lot of that just came down to identity because I couldn't get away from hoop for a while and I had identity crisis when I did. I don't want anyone else to feel that way or experience that because the ball's gonna stop bouncing. How do we prepare them for life outside of that? How do we make sure we're taking care of them while they are playing their sport, mental health? But also just set them up for life and hopefully mentorship opportunities. That was the why behind it. Again, it was I think a lot of it, if I'm being honest, came from me being a lot more still. Like when you're in college, yo, it's go. As soon as I got on campus, I think I was training the first or second day. And so you don't have time to breathe.
Huh.
When I was with Seattle, you're traveling a lot. You have more downtime, but you're still not really a lot of downtime to really sit with yourself and say, hey, what's my next step? And then Bay Area, there was no way. So for me, it was like the stillness of moving to LA almost. And I'm like, I have all this free time instead of me trying to like fill it with other things and opportunities. I had to be okay with not doing all the extra stuff. And it wasn't until I was actually able to reflect where I said, hey, this is what fills my cup. This is what I want to do. And don't get me wrong, it didn't get immediately to that point because even then, I could do this, I could do this. But time, man, I gave it enough time, I gave it enough thought, reflected enough, and I eventually got to a point where as soon as I finished, man, it was a lot more clear than I thought it was going to be. When you're in the middle of it, you're like, I can do all these things. And I'm just glad that I was able to figure that out before I got too old, before I got too old.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a big realization to make. And I think it's important to also reiterate that the ball is going to stop bouncing. And how do you prepare yourself for life after basketball? And I think you're doing a great job of trying to just give as much game as possible, but also set kids up to succeed now in the future and for the next generation and the generations after that, they can set them up because now that there is college athletes getting paid, you can start to think about how do you invest that money? How do you have that work for you? How do you have that grow over time? What are good strategies to take to be able to set yourself up now and in the future? So you talked about what you wanted, how you got to this point. Now that you're out of school and you're like working in the field now and working with athletes in this role, what is the ultimate vision look like for you now that you're in it?
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Before we get into today's episode, this episode is brought to you by The Blueprint, a free community for hoopers who want to get better at the game of basketball. You'll have the chance to get weekly content, have the ability to ask any and all your questions related to the game, and it's free. So the link's in the bio. Join, and we'll see you guys in the Blueprint. Now let's get back to today's episode.
It's a good question. And honestly, that that's something that continues to evolve, right? So for me, it's like it's so crazy. Even a year ago, it's crazy saying this out loud, but I knew I wanted to be more involved in the student athlete development and then also work in NIL education. But it's like there wasn't really a role for that. There was like a bunch of NIL, there's like this development and all this stuff. But even now, I literally have exactly what I was kind of looking for a year ago. And even then, it's like I continue to brainstorm. Damn, I can do this. I can take it here. So for me, it's eventually I would love to work with the HBCU. I would love to be able to continue to give the same resources and same just opportunities, specifically to Black students or just students of color. Doesn't have to be Black, but ideally HBCU, just because I think representation is important, man. If I have someone that's able to give me this game and mentorship that look like me, I think that can make a big difference. But for me, I would love to be at HBCU specifically. Don't really have one off the top of my head, but just being able
All
to maybe even any one of them right now,
of
man.
them?
Hey,
All
whoever's
of them.
called, whoever calls. But even then, HBCU and it's specifically like it'd be dope to even work with. It doesn't have to be a Division 1, right? Maybe it's a junior college, maybe it is a Division 2 or whatever the case is. Because for me, it's those are more of the underrepresented groups where maybe they don't have the major resources of a Division 1, but maybe I can at least provide them with something that is scaled to where they are, right? I can scale the programs. We might not be able to go see the Lakers on a visit, but maybe we can go see a professional team that's a little bit more local, and even the financial literacy, things like that, and education. So for me, it's right now still figuring it out, but I would love to work at a HBCU. I would love to work at not even a major D1, but a smaller institution, because I feel like that's an opportunity to give back to not only just the communities that I want to get back to that look like us, but also just the communities that may not have those major resources. Because I think that's what equity is all about. Even when I was blessed enough to work professionally, I wanted to be skilled enough and be good enough where I could still go work with a high school player and give them that full experience of, oh, this is what a professional is like when it comes to the training side. I want to be that good where I can go work with HBCU and still have that skill set. Maybe it's not a major D1, maybe it's not Howard. We'll see, crossing our fingers, but I can still get that same programming and mentorship that Howard would get.
So you've mentioned NIL a couple times. Can you give us a
Mhm.
big picture overview of what NIL is and what it means for college athletes, high school athletes, and just where we're at with the game right now?
Yeah, so NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. So it is basically, to make it very simple, it's basically like your branding rights. Each individual on this planet, like basically, even an athlete or not, they have an opportunity to sell their name, image, and likeness through endorsements, sponsorships, things like that. Specifically for college athletes, it's going to be different. So I'm at a JUCO, it's going to be a little bit different than it is at a Division 1. But basically, schools have now allowed college athletes to be able to profit off of their personal brand. So what that looks like, typically, you'll either do social media. So let's say Nike, right, is going to take Juju and say, hey, Juju, you're amazing at basketball. We love your presence, your personal brand. If you sign with us, not only are we going to give you the latest and greatest apparel, but at the same time, we're also going to compensate you for promoting our brand, appearing in commercials, things of that nature. So let's say Juju signs that contract, and now she can earn money through her personal brand, specifically with Nike. I think what does get confused at times is that basically companies just pay players, right, just to be who they are. That's not permissible. Basically, if a company is paying you for your NIL, for your name, image, and likeness, you got to have some type of work that's associated with it. Most of the time, if you have a college athlete signing an NIL deal, they're supposed to be doing speaking engagements, some type of social media posts where they're filming themselves talking about something or posting about this latest brand or latest product that they're using for this company, et cetera, et cetera. So NIL as a whole, it allows athletes, which before it was 2021, they would literally appear in video games, they would literally commercials, et cetera. They couldn't get paid for it, right? Because the student athlete tag in 2021, that got changed. And so now athletes can make money off the field, off the court, using their personal brand, right? And obviously, like I said, we see the 1%. So we do see like the millions of dollars, $1 million deals, et cetera. Most NIL deals, especially with depending on your sport, if it's not a major sport like football, men's basketball, even women's basketball, it's probably closer to $500 or $600, right? And so it's not going to be, I wouldn't say life-changing money, but I can use $500. So hey, somebody sign me to an idea. I'll post, hey, what you need me to say? How you need me to say it? So that's in a nutshell. That's basically what it is. I do want to say it is different than revenue sharing. I'm not trying to make it complicated. Revenue sharing, that happened as of last year. What that means is now colleges, the institutions themselves can now pay a percentage of their revenue to college athletes.
Oh.
So that is going to be different than NIL. NIL is third party. It is Nike, Adidas, Kibbles and Bits. It's all these companies that can sign these players to promote their brand. The revenue sharing is if, hey, I'm going to sign Juju, and we're also going to pay you X amount of money. Same thing, some type of work that we're going to do, but that's going to be separate from NIL. So companies can't just pay an athlete just because of who they are. It's got to be some type of branding or sponsorship they got to do. But all money, in my opinion, that can be tied to your athletic, who you are as a personal brand. I think it's game changing. Well worth it. It changes every day though, man. I will tell you that. We always have some type of lawsuit going on. So as of what is this, August 15th, that is how it works. 2026, who knows? They might have a lawsuit next year and then this gets flipped over on its head. So that's in a nutshell, that's where we sit with NIL.
So now that colleges can pay their athletes, big companies can come, or even small companies can come pay players for their name, image, and likeness. Are there things what are things that you find that parents and players maybe misunderstand about the NIL landscape and how getting paid in college, about getting paid in college?
Yeah. I'll say right now, just personally, from my own experience, at times I think parents think that if their son or daughter is whatever sport they're playing, they're competing and they're playing very well, that is also going to be indicative of how much money they get. So just because you play well in a game or a sport or 1 year, whatever that looks like, you can't make more money based off your athletic performance. That's the first thing. So if you have a deal, that's based on, it's called fair market value. And again, that goes into other nuances. So what sport do they play? If they play football, are they really good? Let's say Arch Manning from Texas, right? His fair market be based on where he plays, the sport he plays, football, makes the most money besides men's NCAA tournament. And also it's Peyton Manning's son. So he's got a profile around him that's going to basically indicate how much money he can command on the market based on what he brings in terms of like revenue for playing for Texas. Versus if I get a crew member that competes and I don't even want to say, let's say Dartmouth, right? They're going to command significantly less money, not because of any other reasons outside of it's a smaller sport, right? It may be a smaller school, and maybe that social profile is going to be a little bit different depending on who they are. And so I think a lot of times parents also see, oh, Arch Manning's getting $1 million. Why can't my son make $1 million or my daughter make $1 million? And I'm like, those are the nuances that just come with it, right? So not every athlete, again, we kind of talked about it, but that 1% is all the headlines we see. Oh, I just signed for $200,000, $300,000, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, that's not realistic for everybody. That's what's making the headlines, but you got to think there's going to be over 300 Division I institutions. You got all these other sports, tennis, right? We're not going to command the same type of money. So I think the expectation needs to be managed about what could potentially be realistic. Like I said, the average probably closer to $500 or $600. And again, that depends on where you play, what sport you play, social media presence as well. So it's like just being aware that, hey, you may not necessarily come in and make life-changing money off of this. However, I do think it's important that parents actually understand that you can, at the very least, even with smaller deals, it does give you a resume, right? So if you do this small deal with, I don't know why I keep saying kibbles and bits is just funny, kibbles and bits, right? Hey, they're gonna pay you $500, $600 to for the entire season for posting, speaking engagements, whatever, right? And so you've got that sponsorship, you finish the season, maybe next year, depending on what that contract looks like. Hey, we want to maybe give you more money, but also, would you like to partner with PETA? We have a new contract with PETA, so would you be interested in that? And so again, it's kind of like building their resume. So by the time we talk about student athlete development just now, by the time they get done with their athletic career, they've had partnerships. That's business development. So when they're done, maybe it isn't an entrepreneurship opportunity, but maybe it is an opportunity to be able to actually sit down, have a resume where they've worked with different companies and be able to parlay that into something where maybe it is a corporate role. But that is, again, I don't want to digress too much. But the biggest things I see, I think parents kind of get an expectation that player A should make much as player B, not realistic, but also just because your kid is good doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be compensated specifically because they're good at their sport. Again, the best crew, coxswain, whatever, is not going to make the same type of money that AJ DeBonsa is going to make, right? And that's just because at the end of the day, he's #1 overall in the NBA, men's basketball, played at BYU, major institution. He's just going to command different money.
The fact that we're calling BYU major institution, how the times have changed. How the times have changed.
Man, as soon as I said it, I was like, weird.
So let's say I'm a freshman in high school. I see the AJ DeBonsas of the world. I see the Arch Mannings of the world. I see the Pages of the world, Caitlin Clarks making money in college, and my parents see this too. Are there ways that I can prepare myself to potentially be in that kind of situation to garner big NIL deals, but also just prepare myself for life in the spotlight?
Yeah, honestly, I think the biggest thing right now, and we're seeing it right now, one of my first projects literally is to help some of our college athletes with their profiles, but Open Doors is actually it is a NIL marketplace where basically you can have your own profile on there. I always tell college athletes right now, the best thing they can do is to begin making that social presence felt. So Open Doors, again, is an NIL marketplace. Basically, you go on and you're able to create a profile. And it's almost, I say, like Instagram. You connect all your socials on there. You talk about what your interests are. You can talk about literally anything on there in a short bio, right? And then anyone, any company that has some type of sponsorship or some type of deal with Open Doors, they can go on, find your profile. They can literally offer you within the app. And so that's one project we're working on. But I think even for just like freshmen in high school, it's crazy, but I tell them right now, start thinking about how you portray yourself on social media. So to me, that's the easiest channel that a lot of companies are going to try to find people through. Obviously, through your sport, let's just say your basketball, right? If you're doing your thing in the court, cool. Companies can notice that. But at the end of the day, companies are not going to work with a knucklehead. So even if you're good at your sport and they go on your social media, they're on Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, LinkedIn, and you're posting some wild stuff, right? They're going to look at that and say, do we want this person representing our company? Even if they're a freshman, they still got eyes on you. They know who you are, but again, half the battle is somebody even liking you. So I tell the freshmen, hey, think about the message you're putting across. What are you posting about? What are you reposting? What type of music are you putting in your posts? Is it explicit? Is it clean? And then on top of that, think about, again, who are you outside of your sport? If you're just a hooper all day, you might get some offers from Nike and stuff like that. But also, if you're passionate about photography, you can get a photography sponsorship through NIL in time if you're good enough, or if you start making those connections. So start posting some of the stuff that you enjoy, like some of the pictures you've taken, some of the edits you've done, right? So I think it's important, again, part of like putting that message out is not just being squeaky clean, but also just who are you and authentic messaging. Because a lot of companies, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at, if I give this person a sponsorship, do they actually care about using this thing? Because they're not going to give you a sponsorship or a deal and you're half-ass talking about it. Yeah, this food is good. It's chill. Like, if you actually care about photography, you're passionate about it, you're talking about it, when you get that, I forget the name of the camera company, but it's like Nikon or something like that, but they give you a deal, right? And you're passionately talking about it. It's, bro, like that is how you build relationships. That's how you build trust. All right. And then your audience is going to capture that. So for me, I think it's about the message you're portraying now on socials. It doesn't have to be just Instagram. That's most popular. I'm also thinking about LinkedIn. I made a LinkedIn probably, it was for a project too, and I can't remember. I think I was a sophomore in high school, right? Now you're starting to see more athletes. Even Russell Westbrook posted his retirement video on LinkedIn, right? You're starting to see more athletes actually leverage LinkedIn a lot more because of the opportunities that sport is presenting. Now, we're all walking around as businesses, walking intellectual properties. So think about even putting your messaging across on LinkedIn, who you are, even if you're young, right? Starting to understand how to connect with other people through the platform. Because again, it's just all about, like you said, timing, but it's also about putting yourself out there. You can't get lucky in your room, right? You got to get lucky. You ain't gonna find $20 in your room unless it's out your own pocket. So you got to go out to go find it. So
Yeah.
for me, I think it's just about thinking about different ways you can have that, I call it a virtual resume, how we can put that together, the messaging you want to put out there, and then putting yourself out there and allowing luck to find you, allowing companies and brands to find you. And if you want to take it a step further, I say curate a specific message, write a specific message to someone that works at whatever company you would love a NIL deal through. So if you love cameras, you reach out to Canon, someone that works at Canon. Hey, my name is Play Basketball. I'm passionate about cameras, et cetera, et cetera. I would love an opportunity to work with you in the future down the line. And maybe it's not an opportunity you can do right then, right? Because you're a freshman, but maybe you make that connection. They go on your Instagram. Oh, he's actually posting some good shots. Go on your LinkedIn. Oh, okay. Like he's talking about his journey, the internships he'd be interested in. Okay. You have that relationship. So when you're a senior going to freshman year of college, it's like you've already done that work. You've already got that resume built out, right? And you've already made the connections. So now at that point, it's just all right, how do we get them involved? How do we get her involved? To tie all that up in a nice bow, man, social presence, it's everywhere. You have a digital footprint. Make sure when someone finds it, make sure it represents who you genuinely, authentically are. But also keep in mind what you're saying on there because it can never be deleted. Digital footprint is out there always. People can find it. And two, I think being able to start making meaningful connections, even if it doesn't mean a deal today. I made a connection with, shout out to Emily. I made a connection with Emily in 2019. 4 years later, that got me an opportunity with the Seattle Storm. It took 4 years. And I didn't go into that conversation expecting a opportunity like that. I just want to make a connection and down the line it paid off. I'd start focusing on that now, right? And again, this is 2026, August 15th. Who knows where it could be 4 years down the line? It changes every day, but start really thinking about that digital risk and how people see you authentically, but also professionally.
Sad. So I don't have much to add to that point. I think you covered it all. Now, as we start to wrap up, are there things that you want athletes to take away from this conversation? Maybe 1 to 2 takeaways you really want them to, if they do nothing else, if everything went in one ear and out the other, what do you want them to take away from this conversation today?
Man, that's such especially with athletes too, man. They might say, all right, give me the cliff notes. What you mean by that? I think the biggest thing, freshman to senior in high school, freshman in college, it doesn't matter. I think the biggest thing is one, focus on the basics. And this is just in life. I know we're talking strength and conditioning, but focus on the basics and the fundamentals, right? We live in a world where everyone can find the sexiest exercise, you can find the best posts, etc. But at the end of the day, if you ain't got your foundations handled, situated, it doesn't matter. You're building a house on rollerblades, right? It's going to get shaky real fast, physically, but also in life. Focus on the foundation, your actual fundamentals. Say two, think about that again. I keep harping on it, but it changed my life. Focusing on what that digital resume looks like, that digital footprint. Do you want companies to look at you like, I don't know, right? Or say, how do we collaborate with this person, right? And that turns into leverage. Leverage can turn into money, right? And then that can turn into what your career looks like after. Really start thinking about how you portray yourself out there on the internet. And also, three, it's okay to start thinking about what that career looks like after your sport. Again, the ball is going to stop bouncing for every single person on this planet. No one is going to play basketball and then just lay down in the coffin after, right? Hey, I just did 70 years, I'm good. Eventually, you're going to stop physically being able to play basketball or your sport, doesn't matter. So start thinking about what that looks like after. And I think it doesn't have to be like, I have this specific job in mind. Start thinking about what do you like outside of the game? Whatever it is you do. Who are you? What's your identity? What are you good at? Again, I met a player that loved making pound cakes. I was like, you need to be going to a bakery. You should be finding an internship through that. They love to bake. So who are you outside of that? Because I think that can really help open up the conversation about where your life can take you after the game. Those three things, man, keep it simple. Focus on the foundation. Think about how you portray yourself in the world on the internet. And then also just being able to know yourself outside of your sport, that can help you really build a life, a meaningful life outside of what you do.
Yeah, I think if you have a succinct answer to what do you like to do outside of your sport, and you can answer that, good, you're in a good place.
Yeah, exactly, man.
You're
Exactly.
in a good place. But X, I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you do or like potentially work with you in the future?
Yeah, man. I'm on Instagram. I've never changed it. I thought about changing it, but I'm gonna keep it. It's the Sports Geek. So basically all one word. The only thing is that second S in sports, it's a Z. Because somebody else had the regular S, so I had to put a Z. And then LinkedIn, if you just look up my name, you'll find me. I'm always talking NIL, trying to talk more sports business. Those are the two that you're definitely gonna be able to find me on. And then just reach out to me. I'd say the biggest thing is a lot of people, I see a lot of people not really opening themselves up to just reaching out to someone, a stranger. Feel free to reach out. I may have the answer, I may not, but we'll talk about it and we'll get you in the right spot. But LinkedIn, Instagram are definitely going to be the main two that I'm consistently going to get you back on.
Okay. Y'all heard the man. He's consistent. He posts good stuff. You learn a lot from whenever X posts, and I think it's just the beginning for what the impact he's about to make in the sports world. So, X, I appreciate you coming on. We'll catch y'all in the next episode of the NLB Pod. Peace.
This episode is brought to you by The Blueprint. If today's episode resonated with you and you want to be part of the community where you can ask questions like this and get real answers from someone who knows basketball and the body, then The Blueprint is for you. It's completely free to join. Weekly value from me, monthly live Q&As where you can ask your questions and you get a real response. A community of hoopers who get it. The link is in the show notes. Come introduce yourself inside. I'm really looking forward to you guys joining. We'll see y'all in there.